Hello again, this is Daniel, back with another Book of the Week review. This week we're reviewing the title The 80-20 Principle by Richard Koch, which is a business and economics book all about the idea of getting more out of life by doing things that are important. Now the 80-20 principle, even though it was originally to do with economics, actually extends to a lot of parts of different people's lives. And the more you think about it, you'll discover that there's a lot of things that you do in your life where only a small amount of effort is required to get a large result. Now this book's been really well reviewed on YouTube and Amazon, so I'm not going to spend a great deal of time going over the detail of it today. I just want to share a couple of really key ideas that have helped me personally to actually improve my life in a lot of ways, and I wanted to share them with you in this quick review. So generally when we talk about the 80-20 principle, it tends to focus on business. 80% of our profits come from 20% of our customers, or 20% of our employees in a business tend to create 80% of the results, that type of thing. And while that's very, very true, there's also a lot of other things in our lives that are very driven by this 80-20 imbalance. And it's important if you can actually start to look for them and be very analytical about the things in your life that you do and the things that get you results. You'll find, quite surprisingly sometimes, that it's actually small things that have a huge impact. And it's a very powerful technique once you actually start to look at it from that way and see that things can be influenced by a small amount of effort in the right place at the right time. It's very empowering and it helps you a great deal to move ahead. One of the most powerful ideas in the book is something that Richard Koch talks about when he says the universe is wonky. Which basically what he's saying is that even though we think that everything's balanced and fair and that if we put in a certain amount of effort we'll get out a certain amount of result, actually it's not like that at all. Everything is a little bit skewed and a little bit off kilter. And if we start to think that often we're not actually getting 50% return for 50% of effort, it actually starts to change our perspective and we can see that the world is unbalanced. Now you might work in a company and you might see other people not putting in as much effort as you, and you might think to yourself sometimes, boy, I seem to do all the work around here. I should get all the reward. Well, you know what? The reality is you probably are doing most of the work. You actually are one of those 20% people in the company who's probably creating 80% of the results. However, the way society is structured, we tend to want to have fair results for people. So even though you may be creating more result in the long run, we have to even things out and make it fair for everybody. So what Richard Koch suggests in this book is to actually look for those small 20% factors, the things that actually make a huge impact in your career and your personal life, and actually exploit them. Realize that you can actually use those things to create large results for yourself. And the rest of the time, the other 80% of the time or the other 80% of your effort isn't really that valuable. So as much as you can, start to minimize it. So once we understand that the universe is unbalanced and that 20% usually does equal 80% result for a lot of situations, we can then start to move to the second idea that's really powerful here, and that is the idea of looking for lucky breaks in life, looking for the small things that make a huge difference. Now, the best way that I know to do this is to observe success in other people, is to actually look at people who seem to be having a huge amount of success for some unknown reason and try and figure out what it is that they're doing, the small little things that they do differently that have a huge impact in their life. Now this doesn't have to be just in career, it could be in relationships, it could be in a hobby or something like that as well, but there's certain things that certain people do and they're usually not that impressive, they're not that outstanding or noticeable, but you'll find that because they do them differently to other people, they're getting a 20% input and they're getting an 80% result. So it's a very powerful technique to look for those lucky breaks and exploit them as best you can. Another part of this obviously is the contacts that we have in life. Now we've all heard the saying that it's who you know, not what you know. Well, I think this is very true when it comes to the 80-20 principle. Obviously there's a 20% of people out there, and probably 20% of the people that you know, that are more influential in society. So it's very valuable if you can to spend more time with those people, particularly when it comes to career, but also the other parts of your life as well, because you'll find that probably 20% of the people you know actually create 80% of the happiness and success in your life. So it's really good to think of people in that way as well and try to spend more time with the higher quality 20% type people. And the last idea I wanted to share from this review was the idea of removing the waste from your life. Now obviously if we're using 20% techniques and ideas and we've got contacts with people who are 20% type people, you'll find that leaves a lot of space and time in our life that is wasted. There's a lot of excess things that we don't have to do anymore because we're getting a great result on the other side. Well, what Richard Koch suggests is actually removing a lot of that waste. He says that half the problem that we have in life is actually being held back by doing things that are outdated or that don't really matter. So what you have to think about is, okay, so I'm putting in 20% in the right places in my life. I'm getting a great return. Do I need to make the effort in the other 80% of my life? Now, here's a great way of explaining this. He talks about the idea of being intelligent, but also being lazy. And it's a very interesting paradigm because you don't usually hear that in the realm of success. People who are actually intelligent and lazy getting ahead. But the idea is they're not rushing around trying to do 100% effort everywhere. They're actually focused on the little 20% tweaks, the things that really improve their life, and they're actually moving ahead much faster because of that. It's a very powerful idea, so trying to remove the waste and actually make room for those 20% things to fill up your life. So this book is hugely valuable when you start to think in this 80-20 way. If you start to realise that the universe is wonky and that things aren't perfectly balanced and fair, if you then start to look for those little tweaks, the things that you can do differently, and you examine and research other people who actually are succeeding in an unusual way, and then finally you remove the waste, the things that are in part of that 80% that don't do anything, you'll find that your life is much more streamlined, it's much more free-flowing, and you have much more enjoyment as well. So I really recommend checking out this book, The 80-20 Principle, when you have some time. It is a very heavy economics type book. It's not something that is for the light everyday reader. In fact, you might want to even check out his other book called Living the 80-20 Way, which is a much more simplified version of the 80-20 Principle for everyday life. But check it out when you have some time. The 80-20 Principle by Richard Koch, well worth a read.